You are looking live at our split studios. This is Fantasy Baseball Now, episode 94. Is here for our show, part of the ball9.com podcast network. On tonight's show, we are thrilled to be welcoming CBS Sports fantasy writer Scott White to the program to hit on a variety of fantasy baseball topics, along with our typical who's hot and who's not, who to go get and cut. And rather than look at two-star pitchers for next week, because we don't know who it's going to be, or the hitting matchups, we're going to offer up buy low and sell high candidate as we're just about at the All-Star break, halfway through the season. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Next week we'll whine about how much we used to love the All-Star break when we were 12.
And at least they got the real uniforms back this year.
How much we love the All-Star game, and then how much it's just become a time to fill space. But I'm good. The Knicks are still the world champs, so I mean I'm good. I was hoping that the Yankees could extend a one-game winning streak, and Will Warren had other ideas tonight. But good baseball night. It's Ace Day today in Major League Baseball. One of these guys all seem to line up. Skubal, Wheeler, Skeens, Miz was outstanding as he has been today.
Yep.
DeGrom going tonight. Seth Lugo, former ace, former favorite of the show.
I needed those 11 strikeouts from Mizorowski tonight. So anyway, it's Ace night. Maybe that's just appropriate that given our guest.
Yeah.
Let's bring him in. Whoa.
Boy, look at the ego on you to just show your own head.
I hit the wrong button.
You know what I'm dealing with, Scott. Let's see how he does that. That's what he does.
Hey guys, how you doing?
We're great. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
As we were saying before we came on, I mean, our league, the Tri-State Baseball Federation, has been on the platform on CBS Sports Line's fantasy platform maybe since it stared.
Since it was known as CBS Fantasy Sports Line.
Yeah.
And it's worked for us. It's funny. I see tweets that you get either a little bit before the season starts, or my favorite one is the IL thing where people are complaining that the platform hasn't put the player on IL yet. So I should be able to, even though you know it's going to happen, I should still be able to do it. It's just like, how much input do you actually have into the platform?
I have some input. I want to, it's most things aren't my call. I have probably the most input in terms of eligibility, which is mostly automatic. It's mostly driven by how many games a player played the previous year. It's an objective thing, but those rare cases where there is some subjectivity to it, the final call is mine on that. I had input with Ohtani, how when he was entering the league, how to treat him in fantasy. Should there be two separate versions? We ultimately settled on one version that you could switch between pitcher and hitter as needed. If I had it to do over again, I might have chosen something different. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember.
Play on another platform in a different league where he's eligible as both. He's draftable as both. Ohtani the hitter and Ohtani the pitcher.
Like two separate Ohtanis.
Yeah, but it's one person, right?
Right. It's one person, so that didn't make sense to me, and it kind of diminished what made him so novel.
Yeah.
What I would like to see happen now is you draft Ohtani, a singular Ohtani. You can start him at hitter or pitcher or both. That's what's missing. I don't know if you guys remember at the time, but when Ohtani first joined the league, the expectation was he'll be an ace pitcher,
right?
And hitting, maybe he'll be good, maybe not. But that was thought to be the secondary part of it, the part that he might not be a superstar as far as that goes. So my expectation was, you'll want to start him on pitcher most of the time, but those times when he doesn't have a good matchup or whatever, you could stick his bat in the lineup and
right.
But obviously that's not how it played out. He is a great pitcher, but it turns out he's even better hitter.
Right.
Scott, how many leagues do you play in? I'm in 3, varying levels. Our main league takes up probably 90% of my time, 9% toward a head-to-head league, and then a categories league I do. But how about you? I mean, this is your thing. Do you try not to over kind of bury yourself in leagues?
Oh yeah. I have to make great efforts to make sure I don't take on too many, and I have to reject people every spring for leagues. I mean, particularly if they want me to join a dynasty league. I love dynasty leagues, but those are forever. That's the idea, and I don't want to have to duck out of it in a couple of years because I'm overwhelmed. So I usually keep it around 15. Some of those are more active than others, but one reason I try not to get carried away with it too is like I actually exert the same amount of effort in every league. It's it is to my great shame if I have a bad showing in a league, which happens sometimes, but I'm not comfortable just accepting it, and
Right.
so if I give a half-hearted effort, I'm just not willing to give a half-hearted effort. So every week, methodically going through all the players on the waiver wire and entering the claims, the little stacks of, for this player, I'm willing to drop this player for these 6 guys, and then I'm willing to drop him for these 5 guys, and then this guy for these 4 guys, and going through that every week in every league. And it takes quite a bit of time. So yeah, 15 is about my limit.
What do you have a favorite format? There's so many different options out there.
Yeah, like if it's roto head to head, and then if you weren't outside this world, you had a choice between dynasty and redraft.
So scoring format, I prefer head to head points. The other ones have their strengths. I'm not dismissing any of them. I enjoy different aspects of all of them, but head to head points feels the purest to me. Some people think it's overly simplistic, but obviously it's a setup that works well for fantasy football. And head to head points, for those who don't know, it's whatever a player does, he gets a set number of points for it, and it's just one team's total versus another team's total. So player hits a home run, he gets 4 points usually, plus the RBI 1 point, plus the runs 1 point. And that's what I started out on. I find you can. I find that is the format that you can most consistently master, or at least I can. And then as far as dynasty or redraft, definitely dynasty. I mean, I'm to a point now with dynasty leagues. That's I know I just finished. I know I just got through saying I exert the same effort in all of my leagues, but I would say I'm a more active trader in dynasty leagues because you can actually find people who have different motives than you, and that's hard to do in redraft.
Right.
Everybody is pretty much on the same page as to how good every player is, and they're all trying to win right now. So the trade market in a redraft leagues gets really bound up in a way that wasn't so true, I feel like, 20 plus years ago.
Yeah. And I find in dynasty, especially as you're competing and you have a chance to win and you get close to whatever trade deadline your league has set, those chips, if you're willing to part with them, could be the difference in picking up the pieces because somebody else is already building for next year and the year after. And I'm not going to say next year because we don't know about next year. So maybe they're building for 28 in the year after, where, I mean, Leo DeVry was a huge chip for me to get what I needed to get power right now. And I mean, there's still guys out there because we have a minor league spot that we hold. Our league saves 5, and then we have one minor league spot that's usually the last pick of the draft, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's earlier, as we saw in some of the mocks that we did. Some young players were going much earlier than we thought. All of us that drafted Roman Anthony wish we had that one back based on what happened, what's happened with him this year. But that spot becomes valuable when you're trying to win. That's a great chip to have. But it also requires a little extra research, right? You have to you're paying attention to a much deeper talent pool.
Yes.
In Dynasty, and you do need to pay attention to it. And if your league some leagues are 40 player rosters, that, I mean, you could have 20 Dynasty players floating around, and like, I don't know about you, but like, I pay some attention to A-ball. Maybe right after the draft, I'll pay attention, but I'm not spending my year looking at guys in A.
Well, one thing that's nice about having the job I do is the research is built in. So right. it does give me an unfair advantage, I would say, in Dynasty especially. I write a prospects report every week.
Yeah, we know.
And a lot of that is just a lot of it is like, this guy. I know this guy is going to be new to a lot of people reading because I look at my 24-team Dynasty League where everybody has 12 minor league spots and nobody has them there. So I write about him and then I put in a claim for him. And it built-in advantage there. Absolutely.
Scott, we started this league in 1990, and the third and fourth year of the league, I won. And the big advantage, I didn't really tell people about it was before the internet. But the big advantage I had was I was working in the sports department of a newspaper in Albany, and I had access to the AP Sports Wire. And for every story that makes the paper, 10,000 don't. And during the downtimes, I'd be reading up on baseball, and I had access to information that other people didn't. And the internet kind of wrecked my advantage. Hence my one championship since then. But you just got to keep battling. But I'm
just finding that out now.
I didn't tell anybody.
Holy smokes.
I had access to stuff like you wouldn't believe. But again, I lost my advantage.
It must have been hard in those days too. I mean, I remember pre-internet days. I'm of a certain age, and getting information on teams apart from your local team, to know what's going on with the Brewers if you're living in New York. I mean, there just wasn't much access to that. You had your local paper. I don't know. Was ESPN Sports Center much of a thing then? I guess it was just starting to gain steam.
Yeah.
You'd get highlights though, but you wouldn't get a lot of features. You'd have Baseball Tonight, but how in depth can you go on a Friday night when you got 30 minutes and you got a full slate of games?
Sure. No, you'd be hoping that the paper had this, that your newspaper that you had delivered to your house had major league stats once a week, usually Sunday, or you subscribe to the Sporting News and you couldn't wait till the Sporting News came out and you could look at every box score for the week, West Coast scores that you didn't get to see as an East Coast person. And that's basically how you accumulated.
Yeah.
Constantly accumulated information.
Yeah. I remember those Sunday papers with they would print every team's stats on one page. And that was, I'd save those pages and I would organize my baseball cards based on them. I'd have the set of like 1990 Donruss or whatever. And this is in 1994. So obviously a lot of those players had changed teams by that point.
Yeah.
And I'd go through just looking at the last names of that newspaper sheet with the stats and see, what team is Phil Plantier on now? Oh, he's on this team. And so I'd organize my baseball cards every summer based on that.
That's hysterical.
Scott,
how did you parlay a hobby, right? Which is what all this has been for us forever. How did you parlay that into a career?
Well, basically I won the lottery. I mean, I knew that at the time how, I happened to send in a resume and writing samples to the right place. It happened to get pulled from the right stack at the right time. And, they thought I was a good fit for the job, but it could have been dozens, hundreds potentially of other people. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that and to express that, because one of the questions I get in all of my 19 years doing this is, how do I do what you do? And it's like, I don't have a path for you that's going to make it especially likely that you can get it. There are only so many of these jobs, and obviously that was 19 years ago. So the world is very different now than it was then. I think now you kind of have to build your own brand independently before a major media outlet, for as long as those are even going to exist,
Right.
will take you on. So how it worked for me is I majored in journalism at the University of Georgia, actually in broadcast journalism. But that was mostly about training you to be a local news reporter, maybe an anchor or something like that. It wasn't really for me. So I knew I was a good writer, and it was something I enjoyed to some extent. So after college, I looked for a newspaper job, not really knowing if it was something I was going to stick with. I knew I only wanted to do sports if I was going to do it. So I looked for a sports job at a newspaper. And I found one in Waycross, which is a town in South Georgia on the Okefenokee Swamp. High school football is big there. So they had a sports editor position to make sure it existed, mainly to make sure all the high school football teams were covered in the area.
Right.
But part of the job allowed me to write whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. There was the space for it. I obviously had to make sure the high school teams were covered, but beyond that, I could write a column of my own choosing. So I took that job, and I used it mainly as an opportunity to show off what I could do as a writer. And when I thought it was time to move on, I sent out some resumes, some writing samples to a bunch of places. But it was a specific dream of mine to write about fantasy baseball specifically, like that. I didn't realize this until long after I got the job, but my roommate in college had asked me at one point, because I'm about to graduate, I don't know what I'm going to do, and he's like, if you could do anything, if you could have a job doing anything, what would it be? And I told him writing about fantasy baseball. So I didn't think it was that realistic,
Right?
But I figured, why not just send it in? I wasn't applying to a specific job, which is supposedly a no-no when you're job hunting. I wasn't sending it to a specific person. I just sent it to CBS, and it landed on the right person's desk at the right time. And so I got this job.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's funny, Scott. I ended up with a journalism degree. I write for a paper here in Albany. I started off wanting to be a sportscaster on TV. And one of my professors, my first year, looked at me and he goes, "Look, you're what's called a radio face." Right? So, okay. So let me get my typewriter out and my pen, but it's glorious. Hey, go ahead.
I'll tell you, like, when I was going through the broadcast news program, the journalism school, anybody who wanted to do sports, they told you, get another dream. That's just not going to happen for you. And I always took that as, okay, it probably won't, but it has to happen for some people, right? Like, I might as well try while I'm young and have so few responsibilities. And so I did try, and I turned out to be one of the lucky ones. You never know. It's got to happen for somebody.
Sure. Yeah, the first time you and I ever interacted, you were looking for somebody on a mock draft. I think it was in December, and I was on the train going to New York City with one of my kids, and I saw it, and I got picked, and I literally had to do it from a hotel room in New York City on my phone. It was awesome. I talk about those off-season mock drafts. I love them. There's times you send us we're fortunate enough to be on your email list now. It's tough when it's at 10 p.m. and I'm like, I'll be asleep by then, because I love doing them. But just the concept of doing the mock drafts, and how much enthusiasm do you see? Because it's off season. People are kind of getting ready.
Yeah, it's content that people can't get enough of. They're always wanting to click and see how the latest mock draft went, check and see if their favorite players are going earlier or later than they should, and mostly nitpicking the picks that they think are wrong, which of course there's going to be wrong. There's going to be wrong picks in every mock draft.
No.
And it ends up being really good practice for me personally, preparing for obviously the drafts that end up counting. We do a wide variety of formats. By the time late January gets here, we're doing 2 a week, basically.
Yeah.
Different focuses. And, there are definitely people who are eager to participate, as you would imagine, you guys yourselves. And sometimes I have to turn people away. Sometimes not, though. Sometimes I'm scrambling to fill out a league at the last minute.
Yeah.
But
to your point, I did 4, and I was better prepared going into real drafts.
mm-hmm.
I was far better prepared because it wasn't as much as I was prepared for who I had already ranked at, each position and where I thought they may or may not go based on where I might be picking. It was, this guy's going a lot higher than I thought. I want him, or he's somebody I'm targeting. I need to be prepared to maybe take him sooner than I would normally prepare to, because he's got popularity in these mock drafts, or guys that were going far later than I thought they were going to go. Just because to me, not the downside, but the wild card of mocks is people will take flyers more eagerly in a mock draft as part of building a team, and that's why I moved the early season mock head-to-head weekly email to my spam folder, because I can't see how terrible my team is every week. I drafted such a bad team in that league. But like, maybe I would have taken somebody in the 3rd round that I really wanted when I should have not. But what I did find is that there were players going a lot later than I thought they were going to go on consensus.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to. So now maybe I can wait on him, and maybe I can sneak and grab him a little later. And most of the time that worked out.
Yeah, and there's something just to the experience of drafting that makes you better at it. Obviously, the more you do something, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
You could look at average draft position, and it'll give you a more accurate sense of where everybody's going than a singular draft will. But part of what you don't get from that is, you're picking 4th in a draft, and you decide, it's an odd round, let's say. So you're going to pick in the first half of the round, and you see 3 catchers there that, you'd be happy with, but you figure, okay, there's 3, so I can wait. I can probably get it on the way back in round 5. So you go somewhere else, and then you see in quick succession those 3 catchers go, and you never had a chance.
Somebody takes the first one, and everybody else was thinking along the same lines on those players, and then you're like, and
then you have that feeling of, oh, I blew it. Your heart sinks, and you know how that feels, and so you're not going to let that happen again when it really counts. So that is value that just looking at ADP, you're not going to get from that. And
the other part of ADP that can create a deception is, especially if you use NFBC, right? So 1,600 drafts, that's a huge data set. It's a massive data set.
Mm-hmm.
Is it head-to-head? Is it roto? Is it dynasty? Is it redraft? That doesn't account for any of that. That's just, here's 1,600 drafts. Here's the all. It's a good data point, but that ADP may not be specific to the league that you play, right? Like what you play And what ADP is a good guidepost. I can see that this player's going early in all formats. I get it. Like, Ohtani, Judge, we're going to go 1-2, and Bobby Witt Jr., we're going to go 1-2-3, in some order, depending on somebody liking or not liking somebody. But after that, especially with pitching becomes pretty subjective. I mean, when sometimes Scuball is as high as 8.
Yeah.
But 8 in head-to-head might not be where you want to take a starting pitcher.
True.
Or you might look at who you already have in your dynasty world and be like, yeah, I'm okay at pitcher. I don't want to sacrifice getting, Scuball, Skeens, Mizorowski, one of those guys when, Jordan's out there and I need power in my lineup. So there's still subjectivity that needs to go into the process, and you just have to understand that the ADP's on the whole, and then you got to fit it into your league, and then cross off guys you're never going to draft again because they wronged you.
It can also make you too rigid in your thinking, like at a shallow position like third base, let's say. Okay, you'd be happy with Max Muncy as your third baseman, and this is where he goes. So I can pass up every reasonably priced third baseman until then because I know I can get Max Muncy here because that's what ADP says. Well, your league is a sample of one, and there might be someone else in that league who's going to take Max Muncy 2 rounds early. Right. And then what do you do? Then you're without hope at third base because there's not much to fall back on there. And you had opportunities at third baseman. You trusted in the ADP too much.
Right.
It's funny you bring up Muncy. I have him in our league, and I was the last player to draft the third baseman. I kept looking at it and like, Matt Chapman's out there. I'm like, I'm going to end up with Max Muncy. I know who he is, and I'll be fine with that if that's my thing. And he was ranked 74th the other day. I have a question. Early in rounds, first 5 rounds, 7 rounds, I'm a big believer in take the best player. Don't necessarily focus on the position. Do you have a thought on that? I don't want to take an outfielder just to draft an outfielder. I want the best guys.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on that. So one of my lasting impacts, I think, on the fantasy sports world, not just baseball, the entire fantasy sports world, is the tiers approach to drafting.
Yep.
When I started, that wasn't something all these platforms published was tiered rankings. That wasn't really a thing. And I started writing about it in 2008. Got some attention for it, started publishing my own tiered rankings, and now it's something everybody does.
Yeah.
And the idea behind that was to, obviously, people. It's so widespread that people probably already know, but to denote where the biggest drop-offs are at each position, to learn where the scarcities exist, and when is the right time to target which position, which is more the case early in drafts. So that approach to drafting is, I guess, the opposite of taking best player available. But it does have its limitations, I have come to learn with experience. And I think it is more applicable the shallower the league is. So a head-to-head format where you typically have 9 hitters started, 10 hitters started, you don't have the extra middle infield, corner infield, outfield spots. You need impact from every position, and that's what the tiers approach is best for. But if it is a traditional roto league where you have so many hitter spots to fill that you can't help but have scarcity, you can't help but have weak links somewhere.
Right.
Then probably taking more of a best player available approach makes sense.
So of everything that you write on a weekly basis, we'll do it on a weekly basis because it's usually daily that you put something out. What's your favorite one? Like, what's the one that you're like, man, I always look forward to doing this. I always look forward to this advice column because that's the one that I just like the most. Not that you don't like any of them, but I mean, which one do you enjoy doing?
I would say prospect stuff is always fun to do because it's I actually learn things from it. Not that I can't learn about major leaguers as I'm writing about them. Of course, I always learn something, but to actually discover, to have these kind of discoveries where it's like, I have not seen anybody else talking about this guy, but I'm going to tell you about him now. And I'm going to be the first to pick him up in my dynasty league. Like that's fun.
Yeah.
As far as I get a kick out of actually putting the words together for it, the creating prose for it, like I enjoy more the strategic stuff that's written in the preseason. In particular, I have these position strategy guides that I come up with every year, and kind of solving that puzzle, because it's never the same year to year how a position breaks down, what your focus should be positionally. And so it's fun to write that every year. I also like doing a lot of one-off stuff that when you have true inspiration to write something. Like a couple years ago, speaking of how it's hard to trade in redraft leagues these days, I wrote an article basically about that, how about people don't trade like they used to. And there was actual emotion put into it. It is rare in this industry writing about this subject, which is so much math and crunching numbers and processes. Those are the kinds of things you're trying to communicate. It's rare to have something to write something that you can actually put your feels into, you know, which was something I did more when I wrote for the newspaper in Waycross, that weekly column I wrote that got me this job. It's funny. Sometimes my family tells me that's the best work I've ever done because they enjoyed reading that stuff more than they enjoy reading the fantasy baseball stuff, understandably.
Right.
But there are those rare occasions in fantasy sports when you can bring the emotional element to it. And that's usually the most fun to write.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought up the number piece. So if all these, I'd like to call them made up stats, is the world that you want to live in, and all the anti is get off my porch.
Okay.
Where do you sit? And more importantly, have you seen yourself gravitate more toward using advanced metrics and analysis of players than, like, I'll just tell you, for me, like I don't care. Like WAR, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Like I don't, all that
in fantasy, not much.
Right. We got five categories. That's all I'm going to focus on.
Yeah.
All of a sudden batting average becomes a thing that nobody cares about. I'm like, oh, OPS is kind of important. I better start paying attention to that. And then starting pitching dwindle. I'm like, maybe I better start looking at middle relievers and then I start finding myself as I'm looking at guys to pick up, hard hit rate, pitchers for whiff. I'm looking at stuff like that I never would have considered before, and they're kind of creeping in. Did you transition the same way, or were you more analytic to start?
Well, again, we're going back 19 years, so there has
Fast
been
and Furious, right? It comes at you.
at that time in 2007, 2008, really is when it was my first baseball season. At that time, I was seen, I guess, more as cutting edge. But what that meant at the time was I had read Moneyball. I was familiar with some Bill James ideas.
That thing, yeah.
That's what it meant then to be at the forefront, to be into the nerdier stuff. Right. Now, where do I fall on that scale? I'd like to think I'm somewhere closer to the middle. I'm definitely. It can be too much. It can be too much. And sometimes I feel like, particularly for fantasy baseball, it's different if you're working for a front office somewhere.
Right.
But
Sure.
fantasy baseball, I do feel like there is some degree of, I want to show off this new, I don't know if new toy is the best way to put it, but I want to show that I understand this new concept, and I'm going to try to apply it loosely to fantasy baseball analysis, when really this more tried and true method
Right.
is going to get you there more directly and in a way that's easier to understand. Sometimes it gets to be inaccessible for the audience, I think, and you get people in the industry just kind of talking back and forth with each other, and it's over people's heads.
Right.
And it doesn't need to be, because it doesn't add that much. It may address something new, a new aspect of something, it may get, what's a good example? I'm thinking of something like, swing speed.
Right.
It's new. You didn't know before. It probably says, it tells you a reason why a player delivers the exit velocities he does, rather than just telling you the exit velocities. But ultimately, does that tell you more about how good this player is going to be?
Right.
I'm not sure it does. So, I think you can get off on tangents like that. And Stuff Plus is another one. I don't even see a clear correlation between Stuff Plus and how good the pitcher is.
Right.
So I think it probably has value for a front office identifying a target in another organization and saying, okay, if his pitches rate out this way, we acquire him. We know how to bring out the best in that. We know how to bring those pitches together in a way that's going to make him more successful. But if you don't have the ability to do that, to go acquire the player and put him to your own coaching,
right,
how valuable is it really? I don't know that it means much to a fantasy player.
If you're not the Tampa Rays, then
right,
who seem to turn journeymen into unbelievable trade pieces for them. Yeah, I agree. I think we can get caught in, like, if the numbers become overwhelming. I mean, there is an element of this that's fun, right? That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to be competitive. We want to, we all want to win our leagues. We love, the draft is, if live drafts are sometimes forgettable because of things that were going on at the live draft, but like sometimes the numbers take the fun out of just playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a guest on 2 weeks ago, and he was just talking about how he uses it when he's thinking about picking somebody. Like, if there's a free agent available that might be struggling a little bit, he'll go a little bit deeper and say, all right, this might be worth taking a flyer, because I may not necessarily play him anyway. It's a bench position, but it might be worth picking him up not because of this, and this.
On the other side of the coin, I do think StatCast, the introduction of that in 2015, has been revolutionary in our understanding of what makes hitters especially good.
Yeah.
And I think it's played a big part in building this kind of consensus thinking in fantasy that's made the game harder, but in a way that's understandable, because people actually know how good a hitter is beyond just what his stat line looks like. Right. So I try to give it time when something new is introduced to see if it really has application that adds to my understanding, rather than just jumping straight in and inundating my audience with it. And if it does, I'll adapt it. But, a lot of stuff doesn't.
Right.
Scott, the biggest problem I have after all these years is there's so many guys that have let me down repeatedly. Like, Anthony Volpe's name in my house is Anthony Never Again Volpe. How important is it, would you suggest to people, keep emotion out of it?
Yeah.
Right. I try not to get emotional about players when it comes to trading them. If I can make my team better, I'll do it. But there's guys that have just burned me more than a couple times that I won't even think about, and they could be having a career year, and I'm not even paying attention.
Yeah, on that note, when Sean says he tries to do it, he's failed miserably at it.
So I think I'm pretty good at this myself, of leaving emotion out of it, of to give another example, I was really high on this player last year, and most people weren't. He was kind of a pet player of mine. He came through in a big way. Of then overrating him after that, because I feel this gratitude toward him, and that's something I used to struggle with more. Now I'm pretty good at wiping the slate clean, whether it's at the start of the season or just any time I see something going on under the hood that would suggest a skill change has happened for a player, not just, oh, he's hot or he's cold, but he is hitting the ball harder, he is throwing harder, he's developed this new pitch that's getting a ton of whiffs. Okay, he's new now. This is everything I knew about this player. It doesn't apply anymore. This is basically a new player because of that change, and so I need to evaluate him differently.
All right. I'm laughing at the comment that we just posted. So the last question, Scott, before we move into our buy low and sell high segment. The what's it like when you're in leagues with Chris Towers and Frank Stample? I mean, how much extra juice do you get knowing you want to beat those guys, your colleagues at CBS Sports, and the bragging rights and all that?
Yeah.
The safe space, Scott, so you can say whatever you want.
It's most of my leagues that they're in. So it's separating the leagues that they're not in. I would say the league that I feel the most pressure to have a good showing in are the podcast listener leagues, because my assumption is they come in expecting us. They think the world of us. Obviously, they listen to the podcast consistently. They wanted to be in the league with us, and I would be letting them down, actually, if I have an underwhelming performance, if I don't make the playoffs or I don't push for a title. So those are the leagues where I feel the worst if I don't have a good showing in them. Obviously, the big industry leagues, Tout Wars, TGFBI, I want to do well in those too. Really, I want to do well in all my leagues, like I said. Right. But those podcast listener leagues especially, like, I really want to come through.
Yeah, you know what? This year, Mike and I in our big league, we're losing to the analytics guy. He's got a decent lead, but Mike's in second, I'm in third. Last year for me, I had a disastrous offseason, and it got worse once it came for real. And last year, this podcast for me, the last place guy, became a, hey, don't do this. This is where I screwed up, and I think I'm up to 912 mistakes that I can go back and count from last year.
When you have the worst draft of your life and that's the best day of your fantasy year, you were Sean last year.
That's a problem.
It was not good.
That's a problem. At least the beer was cold, but that was a problem.
Yeah, like one of the top rules for me especially, and then and Sean was bragging about it. On top of that, last year for a lot of us is you never take a closer in the first round.
Never.
Well, Mr. Genius took a closer in the first round, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, Mason
Who
Miller.
was the closer?
It was Mason Miller. I had 5 keepers, but I didn't have I had the 13th pick of the draft, but I also didn't have a third round pick. And that run's going to happen in this league. Everybody so well.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't want to lose out. If I don't get one there, I'm going to be in big trouble. And then
so it wasn't a true first round pick, because it's a keeper scenario where a lot of the early rounders are already kept.
Correct.
But a lot of dynasty guys, but there are teams at the bottom. Like when you finish at the bottom of the standings, if you've accumulated what appears to be really good young players, you may bypass saving 3 or 4 tried and true, I know they're going to help me this year players, because I'm trying to build this team long term, And so it's surprising in what would be deemed a 6th round, some of the players that are available in the 6th round, just based on that. In open drafts, maybe 8th or 9th round players are being saved because they're 21 years old. They got called up. I mean, it could be anybody, right? And Connor Griffin would be a perfect example. Like he's going to be saved in our league. Is he going to be a pick in the first 5 rounds next year? Maybe. And Dynasty might be. Somebody might want him that early, but most of the time, no.
All right, ready to let's get into the buy low and sell high. Scott, we'd love to get your opinions, and if you have a few players on this, feel free to chime in. Mike, you can go first, buddy.
Yeah, I'm buying low on Freddie Peralta because, and it's probably it's definitely more gut than it is anything else. But I mean, I know he's got a 1.42 WHIP. I know he's got a 4 ERA. I know all that, 4.8 ERA. I know that, but his 3-year average is a 3.4 ERA and a 1.14 WHIP. And I do hate the Mets, so I do blame the Mets for a lot of this. I just think that people that own him are so exasperated with him at this point that you can get him pretty cheap. And I feel like he's more likely to have a stronger second half than what he's shown so far.
Especially if he's on a new team.
Which is a distinct possibility.
Yeah. For me, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
am a big believer in regression to the mean. Like that should be the default assumption for any player as established as Freddie Peralta, is that over the long haul, his numbers will look about like they normally do. So from that respect, I do agree he's a buy low.
Well, and he's only 30. It's not like we're talking about, Verlander or Scherzer. He's only 30 years old.
True. On the other hand, I would want to make sure it's pretty low how much I buy him for. Because I do have actual concerns with him. Like it'd be one thing if it was just the ERA high, even if the WHIP being high. But the fact he's gone from being a consistent 10, 11 strikeout per 9 inning guy to now he's below a strikeout per inning.
Yeah.
And he's kind of done away with the slider that was his best pitch for most of his Brewers career. It's not even really part of his arsenal now. And so the change in approach there coinciding with what to me looks like a loss of skill with the strikeouts, that's genuine reason for concern. Now he could figure all that out. He still throws plenty hard. He's still only 30, like you say. But that's asking for something that I don't really know how to predict. So again, I'll buy low because the track record counts for a lot. It counts for the most, frankly, when assessing a player like this. But there are genuine worries there that for Freddie Peralta that might not exist for some other underachievers.
Well, maybe he's not throwing the slider because he doesn't think Alvarez can catch it.
Could be.
For me, it's Vlad Guerrero. He's in his age 27th season, enters the week ranked 163rd in the CBS rankings, 266 average, 4 home runs. I can't forget, and only 35 RBIs. That's getting lost in the 4 home run total. But he's a career 287 hitter with a 3-year average of 26 homers, 91 runs, 94 RBIs. He's just too good to be this bad. He's just too good. I think when it comes, it's going to come in huge waves.
That's my expectation for Vladimir Guerrero too. He and Fernando Tatis are kind of in the same boat where they are chronic underachievers by the StatCast metrics, what StatCast says they should have regarding batting average and slugging percentage. They almost always underperform it. And the reason for that is because they waste so much of their hard contact in the ground. They don't elevate well enough, particularly to their pull side. And like Vladimir Guerrero, we saw early this year, I mean, still, Fernando Tatis's home run count is way down. Yep. So they have similar traits there, and they were underachieving in a similar way. But we've seen Vladimir Guerrero go through stretches like this with the home run output, not quite to this extent, but droughts of a similar severity, and the final numbers usually end up in a good place. So I'm kind of expecting that to happen with him. The one hesitation is the recent revelation about this back issue that caused him to drop out of the All-Star game. And it's apparently something he's been dealing with for weeks.
Really?
Maybe that explains the diminished production anymore, even more than just sub-optimized launch angles, But still, overall I do agree he's a buy low.
I also think the detriment for his production, especially his run producing production, is George Springer's not having the year he had last year. Yeah. So like those factors, we're going to talk about another guy in a little bit, but those factors, like, you can't forget about that. They're not the same team as they were last year. Their lineup is not nearly as potent. For whatever, it's the same guys except for Okamoto. Basically, it's the same lineup, and they're just not doing what they did last year. And if there's not, it's like when Buxton was leading off and he had 12 homers and 14 RBIs. I mean, if there's nobody on base in front of you, even if you homer, you're not going to drive any runs in. And if you're still going to hit for contact like he does, and his batting average is still great, if you're going to hit for contact, if there's nobody on, maybe you're moving somebody from first to third. Maybe. Usually you're just by yourself out there.
All right. Sell high. Or Scott, you got something on that?
Oh, on the buy low? Let me give you a hitter and a pitcher real quick. Julio Rodriguez. He's on the IL now with the concussion, but that only makes it easier to buy low on him, I would say. And apart from that, you just look at his career, first half, second half splits. This is a guy who saves his best for the second half consistently. 297 batting average, 902 OPS for his career. In the first half, Julio Rodriguez, 260 batting average, 739 OPS. And that's about where his numbers are right now. So he's doing what he always does in the first half. I remember the one disappointing year he had was because he spent a big part of the second half injured. So he didn't get that. He didn't get the chance to rebuild his numbers the way he always does. But I suspect he will again this year. And then the pitcher is Jesus Luzardo, who has been productive in fantasy, but that ERA is still sitting at 3.75. I look at all the skill indicators there for him, and he's about perfect as far as pitchers go in terms of how good of a bat misser he is, how weak the contact he allows is, good strike thrower. Bad defense behind him, which probably is contributing to the inflated ratios there. But even so, I think he has a lot more to gain in ERA and WHIP moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree on both of those. Julio Rodriguez it always seems like it's like Labor Day hits, and then September he goes on a tear. It seems like the later the season is, the hotter he gets. And the numbers bear it out, but like if you paid any attention to his career, the second half's always better for him.
For sure. Yeah. Sell high.
You start with the Geico caveman, Sean, and then
he needs a haircut. That's the first problem. My God. Anyway, look, Brandon Marsh he's been a revelation this year. He's ranked 27th in CBS. He's hitting 309, 50 runs, 15 homers, 46 RBIs to start the week. His career best, 59 runs. He's almost there. 16 homers, 1 away, 59 RBIs. He's 13 away. I just, as good as that offense is, I don't think his start is sustainable. He's absolutely a sell high guy. He's a 4-category player right now with that over 300 batting average. I think you can get a lot from him, especially if you're in a dynasty league. He's a perfect guy to trade to a team that's going for a championship. You might pull a draft pick out of it or a young keeper or somebody like that. But to me, he's the guy.
On the subject of, you called him the Geico caveman. Do you remember which player was originally referred to as that?
Jason Worth.
So I was thinking Johnny Damon.
Yeah.
You remember Johnny Damon
I do remember Johnny Damon.
for the 2004 Red Sox? He came one year with this beard and this longer hair, and everybody was like, do you remember the emotional response to that? Like, what is he doing? He looks
Right.
like the Geico caveman.
Yeah.
If you go back now and look at photos of Johnny Damon from that time, it looks so tame.
Yeah.
Like it was just this transition into the big beard era,
Right.
from a time where nobody had beards, Nate, basically. And so like it doesn't live up to your memory of Johnny Damon during that time at all if you go back and look at photos of it.
Yes, we're talking about haircuts, the bald guys.
And then he became a Yankee, and he looked like he was in his first year with the Royals again.
Yeah,
what he looked
yeah,
like.
absolutely.
So your thoughts on Marsh, Scott?
Oh, I look, when for the first couple months, he was sustaining a strikeout rate about 20%. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe he can sustain a high batting average like this. It's something he always did in the minors. But that backed up in June. His strikeout rate blew up to over 30% again. And it just doesn't seem like a guy who misses that much. Certainly one with the track record that Brandon Marsh has at the major league level can sustain anything like a 305 batting average. I think he's got at least 40 points to get back there.
Yeah, and better on somebody else's team than on yours if you have him. And then my guy's Casey Schmidt, and I know it's his age 27 season. I know it is. I get it. That's the magic number, right? That's the number. That's always the fallback. Hey, who's going to explode? It's their age 27 season. But to have a 3-year average of 8 home runs and be at 17, and to have a 3-year average or a career batting average in both cases of 228 and to be at 283, I just don't. I think it's a great time to sell him because I don't feel like it's going to be sustainable for him. Now, could he end up with 25 homers and hit 260? I mean, if he's third base eligible, you might be the happiest person in the room if he's your third baseman. But that's a lot to give up in the second half if that's what happens. And I feel like that regression is going to happen.
It could. One thing about Casey Schmidt that has me a little more hopeful is like everything under the hood backs it up. He is actually underperforming his expected stats for as good as he's been.
Is he really? That's crazy.
Yep. Not by much, but a little bit. Pulls the ball in the air very well, which has become kind of one of my pet stats the last couple years, just how much more important that is to power production than even exit velocity. But having said all that, there's no track record of this. We see players, Geraldo Perdomo last year, like the expected stats mostly backed up what he was doing, but the track record didn't, and he ended up giving it all back this year. So that could happen for Casey Schmidt in the second half. It wouldn't be at all surprising.
How about for you, Scott?
For me, Otto Lopez.
No.
I think Otto Lopez is good. I think he's a good hitter. He's batting 340.
I love Otto Lopez.
In today's game, the math doesn't support anybody hitting for an average that high. I know Luis Ariz did it a few years ago, but it was a total anomaly even for a guy who is like the preeminent batting average guy in the game today. Like, yep. Otto Lopez would need to have a microscopic strikeout rate and or so much power, so many free hits because they sail over the fence and a fielder doesn't have a chance at him. Those are the only ways you can sustain a batting average that high in today's game. Defenses are too good. Defensive positioning is too good. And strikeouts are too. I mean, he has a good strikeout rate, but it's not low enough for him to keep doing this. So I think he's probably about a 290 hitter, batting 345 right now. That's a lot to correct to, even if it's still a good number in a vacuum. And so I think it makes it a good time to sell high on Otto Lopez.
I traded Gunnar Henderson's potential because Otto Lopez was just too good to not keep on my team. So I'm really, really banking on 3 more months of this. Although 345, I agree, that's a bit ambitious.
Yep.
Yeah,
If you want me to
345 is like 390 25 years ago. I mean, and it was rare. I mean, we're talking about Gwynn and Carew and Brett territory, and that's not the game right now, to your point.
No, it's not. There are actually a lot of pitchers you could sell high on right now. And yeah, it comes down to how savvy the rest of your league is. Because I don't know how many people are buying what Eduardo Rodriguez is doing, for instance. But it is a fact that Eduardo Rodriguez, Justin Wrobleski, they are both top 20 pitchers in fantasy right now with ERAs below 3. And I just don't see any way either of them can sustain that.
Yeah.
So those are probably on the pitching side, the two biggest ones. Nick Martinez is kind of in the same category. Emerson Hancock, I have a little more hope for him in the long run, but he's bound to regress some.
So I'll throw you a name and then tell me your level of concern.
Okay.
Paul Skeens.
So before all of the stuff that's come out about his velocity and comparing it to his velocity the previous 2 years and how low it is by comparison, still very high, obviously one of the hardest throwing pitchers in baseball, but there can be a tipping point with velocity. And of course, a drop in velocity of any kind can signal a health issue. So it's not nothing, my concern level for Skeens. But prior to that, just breaking down the numbers, I didn't see much cause for concern. And part of me is like, well, of course he's not throwing as hard because nobody can throw that hard year after year.
Right.
But has he reached a tipping point where he's become just hittable enough that he's not going to be this uber ace anymore? It's possible. Again, I think like the whiff rate on his fastball is the same as it was last year. So by that measure, it's playing the same. I'd be more likely to buy than sell on Skeens, I think. But my concern level isn't nothing.
So I watch literally every one of his starts because I just like watching him pitch. I like the way he goes about his business. It doesn't feel like, you're right, his fastball velocity is still great. He's just not throwing it as much. And I don't know if it's him and he fell in love with his pitch mix more, or if he's a pretty cerebral guy, and I don't think he likes getting pulled at 100 pitches. I don't think that's his mental makeup. And it just feels like I'm not worried about getting strikeouts like I was. I just want to get people out. And I feel like he's overthinking his pitch.
Could be.
And just eyeballs. It looks like he's overthinking himself on the mound instead of just getting the ball in his glove and saying, this guy hasn't even come close to a fastball in the last 2 pitches. I'm not going to show him my other 3 pitches to try to get him to chase. I'm just going to strike the friggin' guy out and we're going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't look like that with him right now.
It's a good point, because this is something Chris Frank and I have talked about on the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast this year, where we feel like that young Mariners pitching staff, they all kind of fell into that trap where, Bryce Miller and Logan Gilbert being the biggest examples. They've started to come out of it recently, but their fastball is so good that it was enough of a weapon on its own that they didn't need to have this kitchen sink type of arsenal that's so popular these days. We're kind of in an era of have as many pitches as you can. And some pitchers their stuff is so overwhelming, it becomes more of a distraction than a help. I think somebody like Foster Griffin needs it, and it works well for him. Seth Lugo, who you guys were talking about, it works well for him. But I don't think Skeens needs it, and I don't think Logan Gilbert or Bryce Miller need it.
Yeah, I don't think when you can throw 101 at the top of the zone, you need 6 pitches in your arsenal. I mean, it's just, how many pitches is Mizorowski throwing right now? 2? Maybe 3? Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just pumping fastball at 105 miles an hour and saying, hit it. And nobody is right now. He had 11 more today. Unbelievable.
All right. Ready to go to who's hot, Mike?
Let's go.
You can lead off, buddy. You're muted, Mike.
Muted. Sorry, I'm shocked that I put myself in a position where I was talking about Bryson Stott. Because I was down on him a little bit because he'd been platooning a little more at the end of last year, and they were playing Edmundo Sosa, but now he's playing more regularly than he has in the past, and he's still only hitting 247, and he's 7 homers, 40 RBIs, 36 runs, 16 steals. But the last 2 weeks, 306, a homer, 4 RBIs, 11 runs scored, and he's usually hitting maybe as high as 6, but usually 6, 7, 8, a couple of stolen bases. Second base hasn't appeared as deep in fantasy as we thought it was going to be coming in. He's still the 24th ranked second baseman on CBS's platform, but he's only 65% owned. And he's a guy when he's hot, that's a guy you want him. And right now he's hot. He's not as hot as your guy, but nobody's as hot as Junior Caminero. But he's not. But for me to put him on there takes a lot because he's been a boat anchor for me multiple times over multiple years. Sean, go ahead.
For me, Jake McCarthy owned in 75% of CBS leagues, started in 69. Last 21, he's ranked CBS number 7 going into the week. Here's the thing with Jake McCarthy. 358 the last 21 days. That's awesome. But in researching him, he's blowing the narrative away on the Rockies player. Going into this week, 36 home games, 38 away games. He's hitting 310 away, 306 at home. He's got more home runs away, more RBIs by 3 away, 2 more stolen bases. His OBP is 351 on the road, 341 at home, slugging 546 away, 495 at home. That whole thing about Colorado, they can only hit in Coors Field, he's disproving that this year.
Yeah, I think Jake McCarthy is going to be a prime trade chip here at the deadline, in part because his splits on the road are so good, and it's always hard for front offices to trust in a Rockies hitter because their road numbers always look so bad. Which, of course, doesn't mean that's how they're going to perform once they're removed from Coors Field. They're going to perform like their road numbers exactly, but it does make it hard to. It does make for kind of an apples to oranges comparison that I think is hard to quantify for front offices. But Jake McCarthy, it hasn't mattered where he's played. Hasn't mattered if he's facing lefties or righties. So, you avoid the platoon split there. Anxious to see where he winds up and whether getting traded, Jake McCarthy is going to clear the way for Zach Veen and or Charlie Condon, a couple of guys at AAA that are due for a call up, I would say.
Yeah, I'm like your prospect column is probably my favorite one. That's the one I enjoy reading the most because I learn a lot with that one too. And the fact that Charlie Condon's being blocked apparently from being called up by who he's being blocked from being called up for is shocking. And it makes sense. And it makes sense that the position for the first time in forever, right, is looks like it's in pretty decent hands there right now. And Karros is hitting, so they're not going to move him back to third base.
No.
And they've got a million outfielders. So Carrick is either DHing or playing any outfield, and he's off to a pretty good start. So there isn't really a spot for him to get every day at bat. So they're going to have to do something. And McCarthy's already reacted well to being traded, right? So obviously going from Arizona to Colorado, that worked for him. So I don't think it's going to impact him as a go forward standpoint. And I've been waiting I was all over Zach Veen when he got called up last year. And then unfortunately he got hurt and that didn't really work out. And then he got hurt in spring training and that didn't work out. So the potential for him is fun, especially there.
Yeah. Yeah. He seems to be on the right track again after having some problems with alcohol and marijuana use. It sounds like he talked about that this spring, giving both of those up, and he had put on some good weight and just seems like he's back to being an impactful minor league bat. So I'm hopeful there's still a future for Zach Veen with the Rockies.
Maybe they can trade McCarthy to the Mets for Cody Senga, because for whatever reason they like to sign pitchers that give up a lot of hard contact, and
Yeah,
you got to bump Mike Lorenzen out of the.
I don't know how that ghost fork would play in the thin air of Coors Field. I don't know what the Mets would want with Jake McCarthy at this point either. Seems like that's they're going to have to be dumping some players themselves.
Yeah, looks that way.
It's a mess. Speaking of a mess, who's cold, right? Michael Busch was one of the sleepers for me in the offseason. No, the last 21 days, he's ranked 672nd through CBS, hitting 162, 6 runs, 3 homers, and 5 RBIs. He still started in 73% of leagues. That's what's kind of staggering to me. Big time letdown so far for him. He's too good of a player to be this bad. I wouldn't cut him, but I would nestle him very, very firmly on the bench until he can figure it out, hopefully in the second half of the year.
Yeah, and for me, of course, once I decided on him yesterday, he's homered 2 days in a row. But I mean, for me, Ben Rice is more of how great Aaron Judge is, right? Because last 2 weeks he's 125 with a homer, 6 RBIs, and 3 runs scored, and he's prone to this from time to time. You kind of hope he had worked his way out of it. He's still at 26 homers, and he's probably up to 60 RBIs now. He's still hitting 267, which is probably, I think, coming into the year, if he ended up at 267, that's great. For as hard as he swings, he swings as hard as anyone in the game. He's 100% owned, as he should be. He's 99% started. You can't take him out of your lineup because exactly of what's happened the last 2 days. But had not what happened the last 2 nights happened, I would have said you got to keep an eye on it, because maybe if you got a little depth, you might want to give him a couple days. You might want to give yourself a week of not expecting something great to happen. But he's a guy, okay, he's in a slump. I happen to have 2 really good first basemen. I got somebody else that's hot I can put in at a DH spot or utility spot. I'll sit him, and then he does what he's doing already this week. So it's just more of not having Aaron Judge hitting behind you has a huge impact on guys. Not named Juan Soto. He seems to hit no matter what, but it's impacted him and Bellinger quite a bit.
Yeah. Michael Busch is a tough one, because first base is so impossibly deep this year.
Yep.
And you mentioned Sean not wanting to drop him. I think taking position out of it, I agree. But I could probably come up with 30 third basemen that I trust more than Michael Busch at this point.
Can't argue with that.
TJ Rumfield of the Rockies, just to throw out one example that people don't think about. But, you got Wilson Contreras, Alec Burleson,
Jonathan Aranda.
Christian Walker's had a bounce back season. Then you got Munetaka Murakami coming back from the IL. Vinny Pasquantino's about to come back from the IL. I don't know that I'd put Busch definitively ahead of Pasquantino, who was having his own problems, but it's only got to get deeper, the selection there at first base.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Go get him, and here we go. Mike, you want to lead off?
Yeah, I will, because I'm still astounded that this guy's only owned in 37% of leagues. I'm astounded that it's just surprising to me that, especially when there's many leagues that have holds, that he's not in people's lineups. I mean, he's 65 strikeouts and 45 2/3. He's only got a 1.12 whip, and whipping a 2.96 ERA. He does have 3 saves. They don't seem to figure out what they're doing in Chicago as well as they've been playing. But Sir Anthony Dominguez is Sir Anthony Dominguez. And as they used to call him here in Philly, Mr. Tony is prone to the massive implosion that's going to make Grant Taylor the full-time closer at some point there. And I mean, at 37%, I'm going to get him now. I'm not waiting for this turn to happen. If I don't have to pitch him every week, at least I've got him stashed in my lineup. And if I'm in a league with holds, he's active.
Yeah, for me, it's Dylan Cruz. That we had Jordan Walker, I think, on the second or third week of the year that he go get him. He's figuring it out. I get that feeling with Cruz. His last 21 days, he's got 3 homers, 13 runs, 8 RBIs, stealing a couple bases. You hear about potential all these years, and that's a team that offense has really, really come alive. I have a hunch. He's on my bench right now. Him and Dale and Lyle. One of them's going to play next week with Buxton going on the IL tonight. But I just have a hunch Dylan Cruz is starting to figure it out. He's only owned in 51% of leagues.
Yeah, I'm getting that feeling for Cruz as well. And as far as Grant Taylor goes, like, he should be the White Sox closer. I know you talked about holds, and like their usage of him has been all over the place. They use him as an opener sometimes. It seems like they've given up on Sir Anthony Dominguez as a closer based on his usage recently, but they're messing with Sean Newcomb and other left-hander whose name's escaping me, Hudson. Like, Taylor's the guy, and I'm just waiting for them to acknowledge that and install him in the role. I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. But that's the one hesitation there. I think you're going to see his roster rate explode if we do see him used more consistently in the 9th inning.
Yeah, I'd rather get ahead of that.
Yeah, for sure.
If I have a spot, I'd rather get ahead of it, especially at a position that's been as frenetic as it's ever been. Like, it's just been insane. Like, it's just from one week to the next. I mean, even Duran, even Miller, even Smith, like, Munoz was a mess. He looks like it might have it figured out, but to your point, why they haven't named him the closer? They're having such a good year, especially when you compare it to what they've been. Why would you not maximize it at all possibility? But yeah, opener, 6th inning, 5th inning, 7th, setup, closer, 4 times in a week. It just doesn't make any sense.
All right. Who should we cut bait with? Let's find out. Since his June 5th masterpiece against the Angels with 7 innings, no runs, and 10 strikeouts, Roki Sasaki has 17 innings pitched, 19 earned runs, 15 Ks, 11 walks, and 21 hits. My calculator broke when I was trying to figure out and quantify those stats and put those into real numbers. That's just ugly. He has started in 22% of leagues, 61% owned. He goes in the category that we talk about from time to time when we talk about guys to cut. He's still got a name value, I think, because he came across with a big pedigree. Make him somebody else's problem. Let somebody else roster him and throw him in there when they think they have a good matchup, and let the disaster go to one of your opponents, hopefully a team you're battling in the standings with.
Yeah, and then, I mean, Noel V. Marte, I wanted it. I wanted him to be great. I really did. He got called back up. I couldn't wait to pick him up. 2 weeks later, I couldn't wait to get rid of him. I mean, it just, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's not playing every day. Maybe he can't play every day because of the way he's going. But it's not the 196 because 200 isn't what it used to be. it's the 5 homers and 9 RBIs. And his K rate's only 25%, so it could certainly be worse, but I mean, still 44% owned because people still probably feel a little bit the way I feel. Like there's too much there for him to be this bad, but you know what? The too much there to be this bad. Sometimes you look at your roster and you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing with this guy in my roster? Suzuki's, I mean, I already had that one. That what am I doing?
Yeah, Sasaki, there was that brief moment where he seemed like he was starting to put it together, but just not enough good to put up with all the bad, like you're saying. And then with Noelvi Marte, what we've seen with him so far is 2 different versions show up. One looks like an all-star, one looks like he doesn't belong in the majors.
Yeah, the one we're cutting.
Yeah, exactly. I think if the Reds can stick with him, and he's such a detriment defensively that's no sure thing. But if the Reds can stick with him, I think in the long run, he's still only 24. I think in the long run, he'll be an asset in fantasy. But it becomes even harder, defensive detriment that he is. It becomes even harder to stick with him when the bad version is playing, like is the case right now. And, certainly in leagues are more of a head-to-head lineup, I don't see much reason to hold on to Noelvi Marte. Outfield and third base, there are enough alternatives in those shallower leagues that it's not worth chasing the upside.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I so badly wanted him to be good, but
it ain't working. All right. Scott, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For joining us tonight.
It was good to be here. Talk about got some questions I don't get asked much and don't get a chance to talk about those experiences much. So I hope
share where people can follow you. Like, if they're not, first of all, if you're not, you're not going to, you have no shot to win.
You're in last place.
Second of all, you're not going to learn anything. You're just chasing your tail.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the content's great. It really, really is. And it's consistent, and it's great information to lean on a weekly basis. And then every once in a while, you get an injury stash, and you're like, "Oh shit, I forgot that guy was on the IL. Maybe I can go pick him up, stash him."
Yep, IL stash rankings just came out today.
Yes, they did.
So pretty easy where to find me: CBSSports.com. More specifically, CBSSports.com/fantasy/baseball. As far as social media goes, I'm most active on Twitter, or as it's now known, X. And there I am at CBS Scott White. And then, of course, you can catch me 4 or 5 times a week on Fantasy Baseball Today, wherever podcasts are found.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks again. And hopefully we'll catch up to you again sometime soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks much, Scott. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Next week, we're going Wednesday next week, right, Mike?
Yeah, the All-Star game is Tuesday. The game we used to love when we were 10, it's not the same game, yes. Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then we can bitch about the All-Star game, but more importantly, we can get back to business here.
But again, they are going to use the real uniforms, thankfully, because I couldn't stand those things they were trying.
Next week, we can start bitching about how there's not going to be a 2027 season, because there's going to be a lot of that conversation starting on Monday for sure.
All right.
That'll be fun for all of us.
We'll catch y'all next week. We're out.
Hey.